Hi, welcome back. If you're new here, my name's Natalia, and today I wanted to quickly catch up on the fall projects that I've already finished and have gotten started on for crochet. So a few weeks ago, I shared my fall plan video where I shared multiple patterns and designs for both amigurumi as well as some wearables and blankets that I was interested in. And now that it's been about 3 to 4 weeks, I just wanted to catch up on what I've made and a few of the things that have actually come my way that were not in that video. So let's dive right in. So the first finished product that I have is this little ghosty. This is the big size of it, and it's the super bulky weight in Bernat Blanket. And I still haven't made the pumpkin. I'm not sure why I didn't get to the pumpkin, but I really like how he turned out. He's very squishable and fluffy. And then I made a smaller version because I did want to try different yarns, just because I've made so many different plushies with the Bernat blanket yarn that I wanted to try a different size. So this is a size 5, so a bulky size. Same pattern, no modifications whatsoever, other than obviously using a corresponding hook size. So you can see that it's definitely a big difference in terms of size. And I do think the smaller one is still super adorable. But I think it turns more into a decor piece rather than the plushie that I would take to the children's hospital, right? So it's not something exactly huggable. It's a little bit stiffer. I still think it's super cute. I'm debating if I want to make it in a size 4 because at that point I think it'll be maybe the size of this body, which is quite small. Um, but we'll see. I do have that white yarn, especially because I still want to make that gnome. I still haven't gotten to the gnome. But we'll see if a ghost also comes out of that. So these two were my first projects, and I think they're absolutely adorable. And then I ended up sticking with the theme of ghosts and made this lovey, also using the Bernat Blanket yarn. So he's quite big. I think he's super cute as well. No pumpkin again. But I'm not sure I will make this one again, or if I do, I think I'm going to change the pattern. So there's a lot of increases here along the bottom, so it creates this kind of like concave shape, and I'm not as big of a fan just because it like juts out in the back like that and creates this hole. So I think if I make this one again, or a pattern that's similar to it, I will probably just do fewer increases here so that it's a little bit flatter and just straight, and then creating the tail as opposed to what has turned into this shape. Other than that, it was super easy to work up. I do love loveys. I think they're super fun and just adorable to make. So I'll probably make a few more, whether they're Halloween themed or not. So I have 3 finished projects, and then that were plushies. And I actually finished another one that I'll pop a photo of up here, just because it's going to be too big for me to hold up here. But I made this blanket with this incredibly soft yarn, and the yarns are a combination of different ones. There's Hobbii Honey Bunny, I think it's called, and the Premier Retro Velvet. So these were yarns that I had seen other people talking about, and they're super pretty, super, super soft to the touch. Um, but I had a really, really difficult time making plushies with them, simply because the majority of my plushies typically start with a magic ring. And these were that type of yarn that when you try to pull, it just snaps right off. So I tried a couple of different approaches. I know one that's really popular is using a size like 2 yarn and just doing the magic ring around that and then pulling that size 2 together. But it didn't make sense for me to try and continue using that yarn. So I didn't want to really get rid of it, donate it, or try to sell it. I just looked for a different way to use this yarn that would not be in the round, or would not start with a magic ring. And so it was my first blanket. So this is a granny stripe stitch, and I really like how it turned out. I think my goal was to use up the yarn, and I got something that's very usable out of it. It's heavy, it's comfortable. I can definitely use this on the couch, and I'm actually really happy with how the colors turned out, the weight of it. So I'm glad I got to try out that project. and use up that yarn essentially. So those are all my finished projects, and they were all projects I had actually planned on. And then my work in progress projects are not. So one that I started and I'm still working on it is a bag. So I don't think it's going to stand on its own here, but this is I think it's called the Èze bag. And I'm about halfway, maybe 2/3 of the way done with the spike stitching. This I started making because one, I really liked the bag, but I didn't want to work with the yarn that was suggested for it. And I knew I wanted to make something colorful. So I kept seeing posts on various crochet groups I'm a part of about the Caron Anniversary cakes that had come out recently. And there were two colors that I absolutely loved called Book Club and Prismatic. And the reason I was seeing those posts is because those two colors specifically and others sold out basically immediately. And it so happened that I learned about these when I was visiting Vancouver and Whistler in Canada recently. And on my way home, I realized there was a Michaels on the drive back to Seattle. So I was like, let's see if they carry it here. So I was super lucky and found this Michaels coming out of Vancouver that had every single color. They had, I think, maybe 10 or 15 different balls of cakes, I guess, of each color. So I picked up both Prismatic and Book Club. So this is my first make with it. I really enjoy using this yarn. I think I'm using a size 6 hook on this bag. But I've really enjoyed it so far. I enjoy how it's working up. The colors all mismatched just like I wanted it to be. They would probably not be good if you're trying to do any sort of pooling. I did notice that the colors change a bit randomly and it's not the same length, at least for the cake that I got. So sometimes it goes from blue to yellow and other times it goes from blue to purple. So something to be aware of. But for me specifically, I didn't want things to line up. So I think this has been great for this bag. So I probably have another few hours to finish this bag. So more spike stitching and then the straps. So that's one project I'm working on. The other project was actually what I was supposed to be doing for knitting. So knitting, I think, is something I'm going to have to come back to. I spent about an hour or two trying to create a swatch, and I was having a really hard time with how tight my stitches were getting on the needle, which I know is a really common problem for beginners. So I'm not too worried about it. I'll try again. But I also crochet very tightly. So I know that's something that I'll probably have to struggle my way through with knitting as well. So one of my friends who is a knitter we're getting together next week, and she will sit with me and just kind of point out what I could be doing better as I'm trying to create that swatch. But that being said, I really, really wanted to start in on a wearable. So I decided to go ahead and use the yarn that I had picked up for the knitted sweater and use it on a crochet sweater. So it's still the Lion Brand Woolies, and I have just started, and this is my first wearable ever. So I do think I'm probably ending up with something that's bigger than I expected, but this is still just the ribbing. So I have already done the front panel ribbing, and I've only done 2 rows to start going up the sweater, and I just started this the other day. I think it's going to be oversized and end up larger than I had wanted, but I'm pretty okay with that. It's a very comfortable, warm yarn. So if it turns into essentially a large sweatshirt, I'm very okay with that. So this has been an interesting process, learning the different panels and how you end up sewing them together. There's no pattern for this one. I watched essentially a bunch of different YouTube tutorials, and I'm grabbing different parts from each tutorial that I liked. So I'll try to link all of the ones that I watched and what pieces I'm grabbing from each. But again, I only have the ribbing so far. So I think once I finish it, it'll be more accurate to what I actually used from each video that I watched. So this is another work in progress. And then I have another one actually that I think I'm going to undo. So one of the blankets that I had shared was the overlay mosaic blanket, and I think it's gorgeous, and I still want to make it, but it does require a lot of different yarns and a lot of time. So I wanted to start with something that I already had at home, which for me, the majority of my yarn in my stash is Bernat Blanket. And so I've done 2 panels so far. And I think I'm going to actually undo this and just use the yarn for something else for a few different reasons. But one, this is my first time trying overlay mosaic crochet. So I didn't know that there are different techniques. And once I had worked up the first panel, I really didn't like how it shapes up in the back, because each row is a different color, right? That's the whole idea of the overlay, is you just do a stitch below. And I'm not a fan of the stripes. So I started, after I finished the first panel, I started researching, is there a way to do this differently? And it turns out there's something called a reverse back panel. I'll put the name in the video I watched up here as well. But essentially, you get the same thing that you do in the front, in the back, just with the opposite colors essentially. So the shape in the front is in orange with the background in white, and in the back it's the opposite. And I much prefer this style. That being said, the other issue I have with it is, because I'm using Bernat Blanket yarn, I don't think I made it as wide as I needed to, taking into account the size of the yarn. So as of right now, it's about 1.5 feet long, and there are 13 panels plus the border on this blanket. So I think it's going to be very disproportionate if I continue. Right now it's basically this wide. I don't know if it'll pick up, but it's just under my wingspan. And I think with 13 panels, it's just going to be too long. So it's just going to look weird. And I know that if I keep going with Bernat Blanket yarn, it's also going to be extremely heavy for what it is, just because there are so many panels. So I'm glad I tried it. I 100% want to make this. I think she recommends a size 3 yarn, so I'll have to take a look at that. But I think I'm going to undo this, and since each row is a color, I think it's going to be fine to use this yarn for my plushies. I'm pretty comfortable tying in new colors or the same color, just a new string for when I'm doing plushies. So I think that's going to be my best bet, rather than keep going and with the expectation that I know it won't look good. So I'll undo this, use the colors, and probably buy the size 3 or whatever she recommends, but also not buy all of them at the same time. I think this is a blanket that's going to take me quite a while. I don't think I'll finish it this fall or winter, maybe even next winter. So I'll probably buy at least the same dye lot for the white or the cream, which is the base color, just so they all match. And then I'll buy the individual colors as I get to that panel, because I just don't have the space to store all of this either at my place. So those are all my projects for now. I think coming up, one I still really want to make that I mentioned already is this little gnome. I think he's adorable. He'll probably be my next project once I finish the bag and the sweater, or if I need a plushie, because I'm getting bored with the bag and the sweater, because it's basically the same stitch over and over again. So the gnome. I really want to make the glow in the dark ghost with the dog still, so that's also next up. And I have a couple loveys I need to make, a few friends who are pregnant, and an event coming up, which I'll be donating plushies to be sold for donation. So I want to get a number of these plushies made as well within the next few weeks. So this is my haul, I guess, after my finished projects, after about 3 to 4 weeks since my plan video went out. And I'll do another check-in in about 3 to 4 weeks again as well, especially once I get all of those plushies made for that event. So with that, thank you so much for dropping by, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.